Hello, everybody. Welcome to Medicine and Science on the Pod TV network. I'm Nick Pellegrino. I'll be your host for today's presentation. Today, we're going to be discussing a revocation of a individual's license. We have it right here by the American Board of Internal Medicine. As you can go through that, apparently there's a gentleman by the name of Peter McCullough who had his license revoked by the, his certification revoked by the American Board of Internal Medicine, predominantly for making statements that may not be 100% true or have some problems in veracity. So as we go through the decision, we see that he does have some issues here, but we have some issues here too. And our issues are that we'd like to have a person who is board certified discuss his issues. And with that, we're going to bring in Dr. Michael Patmos, who is board certified in internal medicine, to give us a little background on what has happened to Peter McCullough in terms of losing his board certification by the ABIM. So, Dr. Patmos, I got the letter here. It's quite interesting. Apparently, he made statements that were just false, misleading, and had some issues. So, what are your thoughts about this?
Well, good morning, Nick, and good morning to all the viewers. It's been about a month since we had the opportunity to get together. I hope everybody had a great holiday season. And I'm excited to talk about this because it's something that I've been concerned about for a long time. But I also must say I feel very badly for anyone who has their board certification revoked. So let me talk a little bit. Well, first of all, who is Peter McCullough? Dr. McCullough is a very well-known cardiologist who has been omnipresent in the media for the last couple of years, on Fox News, in social media, on LinkedIn, Twitter, all of the places where, he's omnipresent. Almost anybody who has even a passing interest in COVID and vaccination has heard his name. He was the doctor who testified in Idaho that convinced the Idaho District Ada County Health Department to outlaw giving the COVID vaccination. He's testified innumerable times in Congress in a select congressional committees on COVID. He publishes extensively. He's a very, very well-known individual, kind of one of the top elite anti-vax doctors out there, right up there, and very close and friendly with Dr. Robert Malone. So McCullough is a big, big name in the anti-vax world. So who is he? He's a cardiologist. He trained at Beaumont Medical Center, and I think it's in the Detroit area. I've reviewed his CV carefully. He went to medical school, has a good undergraduate background, medical school background, internship, residency, fellowship, and he got board certified in internal medicine and in cardiology, and he has a master's degree in public health. His career is interesting because he's bounced around quite a bit, from Michigan down to Texas, and kind of in and around several different places in a quasi-academic career. Not a real high-powered academic career like at Harvard or someplace like that, but kind of an academic career. And his most recent academic appointment was at Baylor. And something happened there. We're not privy to it because it's all peer review protected, but he was removed from the medical staff at Baylor by his peers. The medical staff is separate from the hospital. It's an independent entity. And he had his medical staff membership and privileges revoked by Baylor back in 2019, before COVID. And then subsequently had litigation with Baylor, and it ended up in a no harm, no foul kind of a settlement. But since then, he's been extremely active as an anti-vax doctor, publishing, writing letters and articles, and just talking, as I said, he's omnipresent. Recently, the American Board of Internal Medicine stripped him of his board certification. Now, I have to tell you, I've been board certified since 1985. And it's a very hard thing to get, and it's a very precious credential. It's not a medical license. The American Board of Internal Medicine is not a lobbying organization. It's not like the AMA. It's not a politically activist organization. It's not a lobbying organization. And it's not a regulatory body in the sense that it issues licenses. It's a professional society that issues certification to doctors who meet the criteria for that certification, which is the quality of your training, your demonstrated expertise, your knowledge, test results, and then your track record. To be stripped of your board certification is, I only know of 2 doctors who've ever been stripped of their board certification, Dr. McCullough and Dr. Corey, both of whom are anti-vax doctors. And so why would they do it? Well, the letter that you obtained goes into great detail. The American board found that he spread absolutely incorrect, false information that has led to patient harm. And so it's unprofessional conduct that causes the American Board of Internal Medicine to withdraw certification. And that's what the American Board of Internal Medicine said he did. They said in their letter that he spread false information harmful to patients. So that's why they revoked his board certification. That's not my opinion. That was what ABIM said. It's a devastating thing because without board certification, you can still have a license to practice medicine. You just can't find a job because no one will hire almost no one anymore will hire a doctor who's not board certified. You pretty much have to be board certified to work anymore. And many insurance companies, health plans won't credential you if you're not board. So losing board certification is a devastating blow, psychologically and professionally. It's a stain on your reputation to have your board certification revoked. It's one thing if you let it expire, but it's another thing to have it revoked. But the unprofessional conduct piece is significant because Dr. McCullough has published papers that have subsequently been retracted because the data was corrupt or manipulated or not truthful or whatever reason. He's having papers. If you're a doctor and you write a scientific article and later on the journal comes back and retracts it because it was false, that's very much an unprofessional conduct thing. So there's something going on there. Another interesting thing about Dr. McCullough is his resume. His CV is fascinating. I've studied it in great detail. And he claims on his CV to have 633 peer-reviewed publications in a 20-year period. So it's 633 peer-reviewed papers in 240 months. That's an average of 3 peer-reviewed papers per month. I have never seen anything like that. I suppose he's done it. I mean, it's on his CV. I can't say that he hasn't, but it's an extraordinary number of publications. I have relatives and friends who are top professors at the top medical schools in the world who don't have anywhere near that number of publications. So I don't know how you publish 3 peer-reviewed papers a month. It takes sometimes years to do one. I don't know how you do 3, but that's what's on his resume. So suffice it to say, Dr. McCullough has been repudiated in the academic medical community by the American Board of Internal Medicine, by his peers at Baylor. But yet he remains a powerful force in the anti-vax world. And he is very well known for being a anti-vax physician who has created the concept of spike toxicity. He says that it's when the vaccine causes you to produce the spike protein, it's the spike protein that makes you sick. So he sells, with the wellness company where he's the chief medical officer, he sells spike detox treatments, which include a bunch of stuff like nattokinase and herbs and vitamins. And it's pretty much a natural remedy for spike toxicity. The problem is that there's no evidence that such a thing as spike toxicity, or what he refers to as long vax, actually exists. But he created the term long vax, and he's making money doing it. I mean, he obviously makes a living promoting this information. So that's a bit about Dr. McCullough. There's another sort of an angle to this that's really important that I wanted to just speak to. Dr. McCullough has been testifying before Congress about toxicity of his alleged claims of toxicity of the vaccine. Well, that committee that he testified in front of, the Select Congressional Committee, a bipartisan committee led by Republicans in the House of Representatives, issued its final COVID report in early December. And it was shocking It didn't get nearly enough attention in the media. And the most important aspect of it was completely overlooked by the media. And I'm going to share with you today what that is. This congressional committee I read the entire report, a number of findings. They, for example, concluded that it's more likely than not that COVID came from the Wuhan Institute of Virology, which no serious virologist believes, but this congressional committee concluded that. But buried within there, and they were very critical of, all the response to COVID, but buried in their report, they said this. They said that Operation Warp Speed, Trump's accelerated vaccine, was a magnificent accomplishment, his greatest accomplishment. And they said, quote unquote, that the vaccine undoubtedly saved millions of lives. Basically, the Congressional Select Committee gave a glowing report on the impact of the mRNA vaccination. That never got noticed in the media. I think I'm the only one who noticed it. And it was buried for obvious reasons, because what the congressional committee did was throw McCullough and Malone and Corey and all these doctors who'd been testifying in front of that committee. The committee threw them under the bus. And it was shocking. McCullough was shocked by this, and he responded saying the congressional committee has lost their minds and they're corrupt and blah, blah, blah. But it's very important, because this congressional committee actually came to the right conclusion regarding the vaccine did undoubtedly save millions of lives. But here's the interesting story. This is just kind of my speculation about it. Why did the congressional committee throw Dr. McCullough under the? It's been a rough month for McCullough. He got removed from Baylor a few years ago. He got his board certification revoked, and now Congress completely repudiates everything he said about the vaccines being bad. Why did they throw him under the bus? Here's why, I think. These people on this committee were faced with a dilemma. On the one hand, the Republicans were saying from the beginning that COVID was a hoax, or that it was a bioterrorism weapon, and that it was designed, to kill people, and was China trying to attack us. So either it's a hoax or it was some bioterrorism weapon. On the other hand, they were saying that, well, the vaccine is worthless and it's a hoax and it's dangerous. The two don't line up. If the lab leak theory is correct, which they believe it is, this committee believes it is, and that virus came out of the lab and it's a bioweapon, then obviously a vaccine would be a good thing. You wouldn't argue against a vaccine if it's indeed a lab leak. So lab leak and vaccine don't align. If you want to trash the vaccine and say it's worthless and unnecessary because you're treating a hoax, then you can't make a big deal out of lab leak being a bioweapon. So I think there was a misalignment between their conspiracy theories, and they had to choose one. And they chose one that was most politically expedient for Trump, which is call it a lab leak. That meant that they had to throw McCullough under the bus and say Trump did a great thing by creating the vaccine. So that's what they did. So imagine being Peter McCullough and spending, I don't know how many times he testified before, preparing for it and feeling like, you're the big expert and you're testifying before Congress. And they come along and they just totally throw you under the bus, which is what they did to Peter McCullough. They threw him and they threw all the COVID anti-vaxxers under the bus. And that is in the congressional report, and it was completely overlooked by the media until Pod TV got it today. So that's, I think, the big story really is that Congress found that the vaccines undoubtedly saved millions of lives. Peter McCullough was thrown under the bus. He lost his board certification. But meanwhile, he continues to be very influential, and we're moving into an era now where the anti-vaxxers are in charge.
Well, that'll be a very interesting era indeed in terms of that. I didn't know also that Congress came up with the right conclusion. There's a Senator Johnson who pounds on the table whenever things don't go his way. But if you looked at it, he has no argument. That he just goes, well, this is unfair. This shouldn't happen. Blah 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 blah.
Ron, that's the committee. That's the committee that McCullough and Corey testified for, Senator Johnson's or Congressman Johnson's committee. That's who they testified in front of. And it's just I mean, it is threw McCullough under the bus. I was shocked by it. At every point, this congressional committee chose to spin it in a way to make Trump look good. It was like everything was a pro-Trump position that they took, and they obviously chose Trump over McCullough. So they threw Peter under the bus, and it's been a bad month for him. Now he's just got to sell more spike detox to make a living.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that's what he's going to end up doing. In other words, he's got his foundation, I guess it is.
Yeah, he's creating a foundation, and that's
he's going to do that. But as you go through the decision, and I found the decision to be quite interesting. That of course they gave him the appeal rights, but it looked to me that was very reasonable because the ABIM goes. They recognize the importance of legitimate scientific debate. Physicians have an ethical and professional responsibility to provide information that is factual, scientifically grounded, and consensus driven. Providing false or inaccurate information to patients or the public is unprofessional and unethical. So they believe in debate, but they just don't like this guy who just spouts off stuff that apparently has no basis of reality. And here's something they didn't like at all. You have reportedly stated as many as 50,000 Americans have died of COVID-19 vaccines in the first half. And then he reasserted over and over again, unfortunately, there was no proof whatsoever that took place at all. So the thing is, if you go through this letter, you see that this guy just makes statements without looking at facts. And I think that's part of the problem that the BIM had with him, is that he's just spouting off stuff, but ignore the facts. In other words, full speed ahead. Let's ignore the facts if they get in the way.
He takes the VAERS reports, the Vaccine Adverse Event Reporting System, the VAERS reports, and uses that as data. You can't use the VAERS reports that way. There's the VAERS data that way. There's a disclaimer right on the VAERS that says you cannot use this data that way. Yet that's what he does and continues to do, despite being told that he's misusing VAERS data. So VAERS data can be uncorroborated, consequential. It's not corroborated evidence. It's just something that somebody reported and may or may not be real. So This is it's a sad thing. I feel bad for anybody who ends up in this situation. I wouldn't wish this on anyone, but I think it's important that doctors must abide by hard evidence and not go off. And it's not a matter of free speech. This is when you're saying stuff, the public listens and can be harmed. It has been reliably estimated by many authorities and many well done and published articles that somewhere between 200,000 to 400,000 Americans died unnecessarily from refusal to be vaccinated. Sure. I spoke to patients who were sick in the hospital and their family members who refused vaccination and died, and they all told me they got their information from the doctors on Fox News. So when a doctor goes on Fox News and says something wrong and false about it, has an impact. Hundreds of thousands of Americans died unnecessarily due to refusal to be vaccinated. The very same vaccine that Congress said undoubtedly saved millions of lives. Obviously, millions more could, or at least hundreds of thousands of more could have been saved.
Yeah, I'm surprised though there hasn't been litigation against these purported foundations and groups that claim they look like they're authoritative groups, but in fact they're agenda-driven individuals that may have things that are just not good for people. I'm surprised plaintiffs' attorneys haven't named those party defendants in major class action suits. My belief, though, over a period of time, because this isn't surprising. I mean, we've seen this before after practicing law for 40 years. I worked with some of my EAs and I told them, I said, look, it's been years and nothing has happened. So give it time. But 3 or 4 years later, the floodgates opened. These people were demolished. They were spreading lies just like these guys are doing. So over a period of time, Dr. Patmos, don't be surprised that the plaintiff's bar gets a hold of these groups and destroys them. I mean, it just takes time. It takes time, but my enrolled actuaries told me, be patient. And they were right. They got a hold of them and they just completely wiped them out. So I believe some of these organizations we're discussing, this foundation be one of them, another group for informed consent being another one, will be obliterated within the next 10 years by plaintiffs' attorneys. Yeah, Rick, go on.
So the bad news is RFK Jr. being in charge of vaccine, but he's not in charge yet, and there's a chance he won't be be confirmed. There is some good COVID news. Every year, there's the biggest spike in COVID happens around this time, around the holidays and the new year. And this year, if you look at poop water, they take sewage and they see how much virus is in it from across the country. This year, compared to at this point last year, it's 1/3 the rate, and 40% of 2 years ago, and 1/4 the rate of 3 years ago. So the question is there a drop in COVID rates, or is it just delayed? Because when the peak hits can vary. But so far, it looks like pretty good news. There's a poop water chart on the CDC. They show it across the whole U.S. and they show the spike, this year's spike for some reason, beginning in the Midwest, in Indiana and Ohio and around there. And you can watch it spread out, and it hasn't hit California yet. So it's probably, the good news is probably not, it's probably two things, probably a delayed peak, but also a little bit of a decline, which may, protect us against RFK.
I was going to just mention RFK briefly because I was thinking that he would not be confirmed, but I put a poll on LinkedIn, and we run Pod TV LinkedIn polls occasionally. One of them determined that Trump was going to win, even though other people are saying no, and the poll is correct. The poll also now shows RFK will be confirmed 70-30. So my belief is that he will actually be confirmed. And part of it is also RFK's positions are evolving. To put that in layman's term, he's telling people different stories than he told people years ago. In other words, at one time, I'm not against vaccination. In other words, all of a sudden he'll say years ago, I'm totally against vaccinations. They'll go in front of a congressman and say, no, I'm not. So what you have is prior inconsistent statements that are going on. So if he continues that, he may be head of Health and Human Services. Okay. And we're just going to have to monitor him. This is one thing that the media is in charge of, is monitoring people like RFK and people like Dr. Peter. They need adult supervision. And unfortunately, our media is not much of an adult except Pod TV. We will do some adult supervision on these people. But I think you're going to see him be not elected. He will be in as head of Health and Human Services at this point in time.
Hawaii's governor is Dr. Josh Green, a family physician who spent his career working in the emergency room and still is a practicing physician in Hawaii. He was lieutenant governor when COVID hit here, and he was the architect of Hawaii's response to COVID, which, by the way, was the best response in the country. Hawaii has the lowest adjusted COVID mortality rate of any state in the country. And because we really basically abided by CDC guidance with masking, distancing, vaccination, and so forth. Robert Malone came out to Maui and tried to discourage it, but only a few people listened to him. He was basically, his argument was pretty much rejected. Hawaii did go in big with the vaccine, and we had great results compared to all the other states. For example, our adjusted mortality rate in Hawaii is 1/3 of what it was in Florida, where they largely rejected vaccination. So Josh Green is currently, I think as of right now, he's in Washington, D.C., testifying or talking to senators, urging that they not approve Robert Kennedy's appointment. But I don't think it's going to go anywhere. I think Trump has got a grip. He's got a grip on the throat of Washington, and basically he's got control. And I think he's just going to ram through whatever he wants.
Well, unless they find something else, because Matt Gaetz, remember, he unfortunately had a lot of baggage that came
Rapey
out.
McForehead. I call him Rapey McForehead.
Yeah, and he got thrown out. So RFK is yet to be determined. Right now, he's an odds-on favorite to be appointed. I would not bet it would not.
Kennedy, he's mom and apple pie. He talks about eating healthy and getting rid of chemical. I mean, it's all good. Who's going to oppose? Nobody's against exercise and diet and eating, right?
Yeah, diet and exercise. Yeah,
but you can get, like, my wife had us get vaccinated against everything we could get vaccinated against. in case I think it'll take time for RFK to change, vaccine policy. But right now, it's time to get vaccinated. RSV, respiratory, and it's spiking. It's messing up a lot of people. You can get vaxxed against it. And for most people, it's free, and it's time.
Mhm.
He's already had an impact on that. He's not even in power yet, and he's already dampening and decreasing vaccine rates, not just in the United States, but around the world. The World Health Organization has named the anti-vax movement to the top 10 list of greatest public health threats, right up there with war, famine, and drought. Robert F. Kennedy is the global leader of the anti-vax movement with his Children's Health Defense. So he's been pushing vaccine rates down all around the world for many years, and it's resulted in increases in infectious diseases. He's already had a very bad impact on public health, and if he gets confirmed as Secretary of Health, I think we'll continue to see vaccine rates decline. He's going to scroll through like a good lawyer all the documents he can find and cherry pick proof that I was right. These vaccines, they lied. That's what he's going to try to do. So he's going to hurt. I don't think he's going to promote vaccination in any way, shape, or form. We're going to see a decline in vaccination rates and an increase in contagious infectious diseases as a result.
You get inoculated against diseases every frickin' day by breathing in other people's viruses, and bacteria, by what you eat. Depending on what toilets you touch, you might pick up. But the deal is, with a vaccine, you get a medicine that's designed so the inoculation protects you instead of making you sick. So the people who run around saying we're being injected with stuff, we get hit with foreign DNA every frickin' day, and most of it is not a medical product that's been tested so it doesn't mess you up.
So Robert Kennedy has been very forthright about his use of testosterone. He is on supplemental testosterone and also multiple peptides. And he was quoted, I paraphrase him, as saying he's on a whole bunch of stuff that his doctor gives him. He doesn't even know what it is, but he knows it's peptides and it's this or that or the other thing. And, and that's why he's so, muscular for his age. Don't mistake that for being healthy, however. But it's interesting that he's very comfortable injecting himself with peptides, which there's very little good data on their safety. And certainly he's injecting himself with testosterone, which has a lot of risk associated with it. But he's all anti-vax, but it doesn't seem to be concerned about injecting himself with
he also was addicted to heroin for more than a decade, which means you're injecting yourself with who knows, there's no official source for heroin. You pick it up from your dealer friend.
FDA approved.
And if you look at him, he's 70 years old. If you search RFK with his shirt off, he's ripped doing push-ups, and he's got giant slabs of man meat, of pecs right here, and he also looks like his blood pressure might be 50% higher than it should be.
That plethoric look is his hematocrit. That's usually, you see that in people who use testosterone. And I've prescribed testosterone for people who need it, who are clinically appropriate. But you have to watch it, because if you give too much, you get that kind of plethoric color to your skin. That usually indicates your hematocrit is high. Some of his pictures, he looks like his hematocrit is over 60. So that's from testosterone.
Mm-hmm.
And that increases your risk of having a stroke. He looks like
yes, exactly. Makes your blood thick. That's why it's a secondary polycythemia. It's one of the most common complications of testosterone supplementation. Is you take a little too much and your blood gets too thick and your hematocrit goes up over 60, which makes your blood like molasses, and it can increase risk of stroke. Yes.
It'll be interesting to see what he does, but if you look at it objectively, he has no background in health or human services. None whatsoever. His background is mainly as an environmental lawyer. There's a person named Mandy Cohen who used to be the head here of, she was the head of our state of North Carolina's health department. She has a tremendous background, but she was not picked because of political reasons to be head of Department of Health and Human Services. So we have an environmental lawyer who's now head of HHS, or looks like he's nominated. He might be head of HHS, who has really no background whatsoever in what he's leading. So that I have a big problem with, because just looking objectively, no one would select him to play quarterback when all he's played is wide receiver, and that's it.
So,
It was
as a CEO, what Trump has done is he has surrounded himself by his leadership team. They're all acolytes and obsequious sycophants. He has picked people who are just totally loyal to him, and they may not even agree with one another, but they are all in his camp, and that's what he has done. He has made his appointments not based on public health or what's best for the country. It's based upon how he can consolidate and amplify his power and his grasp on the government.
Yeah, and we're at time, but maybe Dr. Peter should not be testifying in Congress anymore. If you read the report, you got to look at the person. He may not be the best person to testify on medical issues. With that, thank our viewers in the United States and, of course, around the world watching Medicine and Science on the Pod TV network, and we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.